Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Brian Hayes, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star in here. We'll get to Dave Naylor a little bit later in the hour. Number of things going on in the CFL. See if we got an update on Chad Kelly and his status. Nathan Rourke and his status. Right, Nathan's going to start this weekend. The Argos are on a bye, though, so there's no real urgency to figure out exactly what's going on with Kelly, but I'm sure he wants to know, and the Argos want to know. I think the CFL would like to put it to bed, so we'll get to that more with Dave. And he's been doing some tours, like NFL training camp tours, and you can feel like the NFL is so close because there's so much energy being directed towards it.
Oh yeah,
like it's full blown. You're in camp. You're into week 2 of the preseason now. Sadly, there have been some pretty bad injuries. Over the last week to 10 days, more and more players have suffered some bad injuries, which is always what sucks about training camps. But like we're really getting towards go time here for fantasy football, for making predictions on the season. And it all starts with Kansas City, right? Like everything has to go through them. They're going for a three-peat, which would be the first time that's happened in the Super Bowl era.
Amazing.
And they're the favorites, and they should be. I think they're co-favorites right now, courtesy of FanDuel, but still. And betting against them is a tough thing to do, man.
It is, but you also forget, they were underdogs all through the playoffs last year for a reason, right? And that was because they were not an overwhelming force for a lot of that regular season, right? They looked pretty ordinary. There were a lot of question marks about, are they done? Like, are they not the same team anymore? Is Andy Reid lost his touch? And yet they
found a way.
They made all the doubters look silly in the end.
Yeah.
Because by the end of it all, you're like, oh, yeah, that's why you don't bet against the Kansas City Chiefs, because they've got the guy who will make the play and put the dagger in your heart when it matters. And everybody else is hoping to find that guy, but there's only one Patrick Mahomes.
That's the thing, right? Like what he's established so quickly in his career, more so than what Brady got. Brady got 2 Super Bowls quick. He got 3 Super Bowls quickly.
Yeah.
But he was still a systems quarterback at that point. He had the clutch gene. He got things done late. But Vinatieri was playing a role in that. Like literally the kicker was a part of the conversation.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right? And they had a great defense, and Belichick was unbelievable. It took him probably until that next wave. Like the 2007 season was when he broke out. And that's when Randy Moss showed up and Wes Welker was there.
Right.
And he just torched the National Football League and unanimous MVP. And that's obviously when the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl. And they were, at that point, were they 18-0, I think? 18-0, I think? Yeah, I think they were going for 19-0. Right. They ended up 18-1. But it took him some time, as a starter to establish, okay, this is more than just a systems quarterback. This guy's a legit stud that can do everything and crush you. But he established the clutch gene pretty quickly. Mahomes has done that. Like we talk about it countlessly in this city, specifically with the Maple Leafs, like proving you have the ability to perform and win. If you get that out of the way quick, man, it changes the whole complexion of your career and the whole forecasting of it.
Yeah.
Like if you get one quick, like the Blackhawks did, Taves and Kane, they got one quick. Sid got one pretty quick. Sid and Gino, quick. Yeah. It's like you get one quick, and then the rest, like the world is your oyster.
Well,
they can never take that away from you.
They can't take it away, and you can observe it in their confidence, right? The way they carry themselves, the way they're looked at by other players, the way they are looked at within their own dressing room. Like you talk about guys that you just had an it factor. Like Taves and Kane at 21 were winning their first cup, right? It was like right
and
around
putting
there.
on like clinics. Like Kane won a cup winning. He had a Stanley Cup winning goal. And like that's an emphasis,
and that's why you have to remember that as you hear the defenders of the current system in Toronto say, "Well, these are learning lessons, and there's an evolution here, and." Sometimes you got to lose before you can win. Well, sometimes you can win just because you're really good, and you've got it.
And that's what really is difficult to accept, I think, for Leaf fans, is that the belief was when the 3 of these kids showed up at the same time, that's what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Like they weren't going to win a cup in year 9. They were going to win a cup in year 3 and 5 and 7. And that was the thing. It was like Matthews is here, and Marner's here, and Nylander's here, and everyone wants to come here, and Babcock's here, and Robert Island's been established, and now Tavares is going to come on down and win cups with all these guys. And now it's 6 years after Tavares showed up, and they've won one round. And the goalposts have completely shifted to now, Ovechkin, it took him a while. And
whereas
Detroit and Stevie Y,
that's
totally different. No salary cap. They had like 12 Hall of Famers on the team.
I know. And yet Brendan Shanahan often you feel like he uses that as a reference for a lot of his decisions, right?
Right.
Rightly or wrongly. Now, Shanahan's a great champion as a player.
Absolutely.
And a Hall of Famer
He
as a
proved
player.
it. He proved it.
We know what he did.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean he knows how to run a team. The point, though, to your point, I was going back through it recently because you sometimes forget some of the details as you go through these seasons, right? And we were sort of writing a thing at the Star about what went wrong with the Shanna plan. And you go back to the second season, right? Or even the rookie season, it might have been, where it was Babcock rolling into Chicago. And I was at the game. I was covering the game. I remember the press conference. It was a morning skate availability, and he's sort of chortling because he just had a conversation with his good pal, Joel Quenneville. And Quenneville had said to him, "Man, you look like you got the new Chicago Blackhawks. You got the new Taves and Kane, Marner and Matthews, right?
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club, man. You got an impressive roster there." And Babcock is sort of like smugly saying, "Well, we do. I hope he's right." And it was reasonable to think that there was the seeds of that there at that point.
Yeah.
Right? No, you didn't have Duncan Keith on the back end. You didn't have some of the depth that those Blackhawks teams had, but you certainly had the star quality in those two players, and then Nylander on top of it. And,
But isn't that the point right there?
Yeah.
It's multi-layered. The one thing is these players have proven that they can't do what those guys did in the playoffs.
No.
They couldn't elevate, throw the team on their back, and put up just astronomical numbers and literally win series and cups based on their stick and their plays and their force on the ice. But also up here, it ended there. It's like, well, you got your Kane and Taves. And then no one said, well, where's your Keith?
Right.
And where's your Seabrook?
Right.
And where's your Hjalmarsson?
Right.
And where's your Bufflin, and where's your Versteeg, and where's your Dave Boland, and where's your all these different guys?
They had a lot of guys
that filled out the roster where it's like, man, that's a really good team. Like top to bottom. Where's your Andrew Ladd? Where's your it was just it went on and on and on where up here the Leafs were like, yeah, we got those, we got the Taves and Kane, which they didn't. Great players.
Oh.
It's not that Matthews and Marner and them aren't great players, but we're talking specifically playoff performances. They can't. Right. They don't hold a candle to those guys.
Well, that's the thing people miss about Taves. As I think as time goes on, you look at Taves outside of Chicago, especially, and I've noticed people sort of say, "Well, he wasn't that good," because you look at his numbers. And they're not that. They don't jump off the page.
30 goals, 70 points
right?
kind of guy.
They don't jump off the page like Canes jump off the page.
Right.
But you and I both watch it with our own eyes. Like, you needed a playmate in a big moment of a big game in the playoffs. Jonathan Taves made that play.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taves found a way, right? Like
looking at his third season in the league, that's when they won their first cup in 2009, 2010. They played 22 games that season, or in the playoffs. He had 7 goals and 29 points. So he was less than a point a game player during the regular season.
Yeah.
Very good all-around player, 25 goals that year, 68 points. Good player, really good player. And then had 29 points in the playoffs. I'm not sure if he won the Conn Smythe. Yeah, he did win the Conn Smythe that year. So
because it wasn't even about the number of points. It was like the number of moments. You could think about the moments where he stepped up.
Yes.
And just like he did in the World Juniors, right? In that incredible shootout.
Just send Taves back out. Send him back out. Send him back out.
There's a quality there. And if sports teams and sports psychologists and draft scouts could figure out what that quality is and how you bottle it or how you identify it, you get rich quick because it's what every team needs, but very few teams have, right?
Yep. No, but you're right. That's exactly it. The ingredients that are there within the style of play, the ability for him to play all over the ice, the leadership skills, the clutch,
toughness.
The toughness. Taves had it all, yet you will look at his stats over time. It'll be, well, he wasn't a point-a-game guy, and he didn't even reach 400 goals career. And
right.
Yet he won 3 cups as their captain. He won a Conn Smythe when that first year they won a cup. Again, 29 points in 22 games. The last time they won a cup in 14-15, he had 21 points in 23 games and 10 goals. 10 goals in 23 games en route to a playoff, a Stanley Cup. Like, there's a lot of players in the league that can't match that. It's not only Toronto, but the Leafs, like, none of them can even, you can't point to those moments, let alone the confidence, and then trump it with the actual statistics and drop it on the table and say, look what these guys have. Like, Matthews scores at a rate that is nowhere close to his regular season clip, which I understand it. It's more difficult to score in the playoffs. I get it. No one's suggesting he's going to score at a 70-goal rate in the playoffs. But
he's scoring at 34.
Exactly.
For his career.
Like, he is not the best playoff goal scorer in hockey. Like, he's not even close compared to Draisaitl and McDavid.
Because when you look over, you look across the prairies to that team in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Those guys elevate it, right? Like, oh, yeah, the scoring rate goes down in the playoffs. Some say, well, those guys don't seem to have a problem. They've somehow inserted themselves into the top 5 of all time or the top 10 list. I didn't look at the end of the playoffs. They were in the top 5 at some point during the playoffs.
Definitely still in the top 10.
Yeah.
Points per game.
All-time points per game in the playoffs of the Stanley Cup. I mean, it's incredible, right? Like, it's exactly what you dream about as a fan.
Yeah.
Our guys come to play when it matters.
Right.
Now, they don't have the cup yet, and that's going to dog them. You know, it's got to dog them. But man, like, can you really fault McDavid and Draisaitl for that? Like, they've shown up. Mm-hmm. They've shown up, man.
Yeah, I mean, they've been to a Game 7 of a Cup final. They've been to a conference final. They have a fair amount of ammo to suggest that they have proven that they are playoff performers. Mm-hmm. That if you put them on any other team, that team's going to improve drastically based on what they can do and what their capabilities are.
Yeah.
So, I think they've proven who they are. Yet, it's still, I think it's reasonable to point out, factual to point out, they haven't won yet. And they have to go back to the well. Like, that's not going to be easy here for Edmonton. I think they've had a really good offseason. Yet, now they have this snag here with Broberg and Holloway where they have to figure out what they're going to do. And, once they get into camp, man, you got to restart the whole dance.
Although, you can feel it, like, if the Draisaitl extension shows up somewhere between now and camp.
Which seems more and more likely now. Like, based on, like, some of the rumors, I don't know what those are worth, but some of the rumors you see out of Edmonton, it's like, plugging along, long-term deal. Like, I'd be surprised by that. But
I would be, too. I mean, there was definitely some skepticism whether he would commit long-term, especially since his, number 97 is...
Got 2 years left, and who knows?
2 years left. Right. Like, what's your level of commitment? And we've talked about that conversation. Like, do you really sidle up to Connor McDavid at his wedding and say, so, are you, I got to sign this
Sticking around here
Sticking around or not? Like, like, at what point do you sidle up to the best player in the sport when you're his best teammate and say, I know that I don't want to put pressure on you because I know you don't have to make the decision right now, but I have to make the decision right now. Like, that's a tough conversation, right? Like,
yep. Yeah, it sure is.
Because, these are life-changing decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you only get one career.
Yet the flip side down in Pittsburgh, by all accounts, it was Sid kind of pushing like, hey, why are we wasting time signing Gino and signing Letang? And, and he's still got another year left on his deal. So they don't have to rush anything with Sid. Like, he doesn't have to sign right now. He could sign at any point. And I feel like Sid probably just marches by the beat of his own drum. There's probably confidence on both sides, and he's probably exuded that. I'm going to stick around. We'll figure it out, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. Yet, it still hasn't happened yet, and I can't speak to the market because, Pittsburgh is what it is. It's a hockey town, but it's not the equivalent of Toronto or Edmonton or whatever. And Sid is such a staple, and they love him there so much. But I would think that's still a story come day one of camp.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if he hasn't signed an extension, it's a reasonable question to ask him why that didn't happen. Yeah. And is he second-guessing his future? Because that would be the bombshell of bombshells. Not that he's leaving, necessarily, but that he's not willing to sign yet.
Yeah. Well, you
the
know what?
whole reversal.
I'll tell you
better
what.
show me before I
tell you
show
what.
you.
If he happened to be tuning into TSN at certain moments during the past season,
yes,
seen a certain guy,
I've been advocating
beating
for
a loud drum that says Sid needs to leave Pittsburgh.
Get him out.
Get
man.
him out. Get him out.
Yep.
If he happened to be in the locker room and they had TSN on, which I happen to know often happens in the NHL.
Yes.
Maybe you gave him something to think about.
I hope I did. I'll take full credit for that. I will take full credit for that. I know I'm not a beloved man down in Pitt. They don't like me much down there.
But I agree with you. Like, I want to see Sid. Like, we'll see Sid for Team Canada. Like that. But we're never going to see Sid in a meaningful game for the Pittsburgh Penguins again.
Never. Not happening anytime soon.
So the only meaningful game he's going to play between now and his retirement is going to be with a maple leaf on his sweater and not the one that people in Toronto would wish.
Yeah, it just is an interesting reversal of roles, and it speaks to his legacy, his power within the marketplace and the franchise. Where up here in Toronto, you look at maybe Marner and Tavares. It's like, all right, you might have to play it out. Like you might have to show us that we actually do want to come back to the table and extend here. Dak Prescott down in Dallas, you got to win something, man. We're not doing anything for you until you prove it. Where with Pitt, I would assume ownership's like, can you get this guy signed? Can you figure this out? We don't want him going anywhere. And it would be an incredible, power, I guess, transfer towards the player and Sid, where if he were to sit here and say, actually, I'm going to watch you. Like that's the LeBron James play.
What are you doing?
LeBron signing 1-year deals, and he's like, I'm not committing anything to you until you prove to me you really want to win as much as I do.
Right. Yeah.
I'd love if that were the case. I don't know if it is.
We know he has power.
Far-fetched.
We know he has power.
Of course he does.
We know he's influenced other decisions.
He's also not stupid. He knows that they're not that good and there's not much they can do now.
Right.
Like what's possibly going to change for Pittsburgh?
You're right. Yeah, but that is a sad thing. I thought you were dead on with that because, and it's selfish on our part as fans. We just want to see the guy play somewhere that it matters.
Yes.
Between now and the end of his career. It kind of reminds me of Steph Curry and LeBron James. Like they were so into this Olympic run, right? And Steph played one of the games of his lives at the biggest moment of the Olympic tournament to win the gold medal. And I feel like I was saying to my son, who is a huge Steph Curry fan, I said, you know why? Like that might be the last time you see Steph Curry play in a game that matters.
Yep.
Like Golden State's going nowhere. Like you enjoy this because you may never see Steph hit a shot that's anywhere near as meaningful.
Right.
Because he ain't going to be doing it in NBA Finals.
No, it's not likely. It's not likely with LeBron if they stay where they're at.
Yeah.
And I don't think Steph's going to go. Like Clay's left. Draymond's still there. I think he could leave at some point. They might kick him out at some point. Who knows? But Steph's a legacy piece. Steph's a guy that will never leave if he doesn't want to leave.
No.
Sid's the same way. And you're right.
They don't want him to leave.
They don't want him to leave because, they built that new stadium.
Yeah.
He is the face of that dynasty. Yes, it was Splash Brothers and Draymond, and then KD came in, and Steve Kerr's profile is what it is. Steph Curry's the man. He always has been there.
And even if you're bad, and they will be, they're going to be a mediocre team.
They're a playing team. That's what they are.
Vegas over-unders in the mid-40s, right? But even if you're bad or just a playing team, you can sell tickets to watch that guy warm up.
Yeah.
Like he's that magnetic.
Yes, he is.
People will come watch this guy warm up. I've witnessed it. It's amazing.
And the retirement tour, and I don't think he's close to retirement, but he could be 3 years away, 2 or 3, he's mid-30s. Like, the NBA, not a lot of guys play until they're 40.
No, LeBron's an outlier.
He is a true outlier. Like Vince was an outlier, but Vince wasn't even playing.
Vince was just a journey.
Vince was just hanging around awful teams and just deciding to play. The retirement tour, that pays too, man. Come out and see him for the last time. You get jack prices. And I guess
I wonder if they'll have load management on the retirement tour.
I would like to believe that they will.
Toronto fans have been burned a few times with Steph sitting out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And obviously he'll be playing in this new Clippers stadium. That do you see what happened last night? So the Intuit Dome is what it's called. And the way that they've opened their doors is back-to-back nights of Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars is playing there, and the first show was last night. So they officially opened yesterday. And this is the most modern sports building on earth. And, it looks incredible. It's so state-of-the-art. And also from a technological standpoint, I guess this is not a surprise considering it's Steve Ballmer, but it is completely, you have to have an app to operate within the stadium. You have to use, it's ticketless, cashless, You have to have the Clippers app or the Intuit Dome app. That's your ticket to get in, and that's how you buy anything you want in there. App. It's just going to be cutting edge.
Yes.
The system went down last night.
Oh, boy.
So no one could get in. Bit of an issue, night one.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of, like, Steve Ballmer was like, pretty cool. I would say that's pretty uncool. Like, I think Steve Ballmer probably was sweating profusely last night.
Goodness.
Because it couldn't have been a worse first impression. And it's so Clippers.
Yes.
Right? Like, we always talk about the mainstay teams, the Lakers, the Yankees, right? And here are the Clippers who are, like, trying to get their way in to LA. We got this new cool place, man.
Yeah.
Just get the app. Well, the app goes down.
Oh, my goodness.
And the system goes down, and no one can get in. Bruno Mars was supposed to start at 8 p.m. He didn't get on until like 10 last night.
Wow.
Because no one could get in there.
That is wild.
And then you look at the Mets. They got Hawk 2 out there throwing the first pitch.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God.
They got that Haley Walsh
Oh, my God.
girl who she hasn't, like, she just accepted the invitation. People are pouncing on her. I don't blame her for being like, sure, I'll come out and throw the first pitch.
Yeah.
She's from Tennessee. I don't even think she has no affiliation with the
15 minutes
Mets.
of fame, man.
15, you see they blew a
maximize
5-0 lead last night, and then she did a press conference after the game. Like, that is so
wild,
Mets, man.
Hard to believe. You're right.
You blow a 5-run lead to the Athletics at home, and then Haley Welsh is out there doing a press conference about her first pitch.
I tell you.
That's why the Yankees and the Lakers just say, we don't even sweat it,
worry.
man.
The Clippers and the Mets are not threats.
We don't even sweat it.
No. Can you imagine Ballmer? Like he is so wound up, right? Like on a regular day at the office, this guy is like vibrating,
crazy
with crazy energy. And can you imagine working for that guy and everything's going wrong?
You'd have someone's calling him, and someone probably got fired last night.
Oh,
like, he seems like a Steinbrenner type, like fired on the spot.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
And then the lawyer comes over and goes, "You have to pay that guy $20 million." He goes, "I don't care.
I'm the richest guy in North American sports. I don't care what it costs me.
I don't care
how they sue, how much.
What's the package? For. 20? Get rid of him. Go ahead.
Get rid of him.
Like, on the spot, because someone would have had to call him. He was probably there last night. I mean, he would have been the opening night.
Well, he's such a this thing is all about him.
It's all about him.
Like, he's having, apparently at the Clippers games, they're going to have. They got this incredible halo screen, right? Which is like it's just hanging above the arena all around the court. It's like the largest screen. If you got the Sphere in Vegas, this is like the equivalent for a court playing.
Right.
Like above a court. It's the biggest thing they've ever seen, anybody's ever seen. But they've got, within that, they've got obviously the main game on. They've got a Ballmer cam.
Of course.
They're going to have a Ballmer cam.
Of course.
Fixated on him courtside the entire game, so you can watch Steve watch the game.
Can you imagine thinking that's a good idea?
I know.
Like, how arrogant, self-centered do you have to be to think that's a great... And he probably didn't come up with it. Someone was like, I got a great way of getting in on this guy's circle.
That's right.
I got an idea, Steve, and he probably was sold on it, and he said, I love it, let's do it. That will last, I'll bet, less than 5 games.
I wonder.
Because someone will see him do something, and it will go viral, and it'll be like, get this off me.
Probably it, right?
That's what's going to happen.
Once the feed's out there.
Yeah.
Like, someone
can't take it back in.
That's right.
Some fan comes over and starts berating the guy, and he reacts to it. See you later.
Right. Like, usually those things get caught, like, sort of with a late clip. But if you got a camera on him the whole time, you're producing yourself with the camera on him the whole time. You're right. That can have some unintended consequences.
Yeah, you might want to watch yourself there. I wasn't aware of that. That's
I've been reading a lot about this place. Like, they got
it looks incredible.
They got power at every seat, so you can charge your phone. Because you're going to need to charge your phone.
Of course.
If your phone's
got to use the app, man.
If your phone's dead, you can't get a beer. You can't get popcorn. They got this whole applause monitor thing where they're going to be able to see who's the loudest fan in the stadium. Like, they're going to measure who the loudest fan in the stadium is.
And what will the benefit of that be?
Well,
they're going to upgrade that fan or something?
Yeah, we're going to give rewards to the sections that are the loudest and the fans that are the loudest. And I mean, they haven't specified how.
Aren't they trying to... They're doing like a fan section, aren't they? Isn't there like a Lakers segregated section or something like that?
That's what they were talking about. I haven't seen that done yet.
Okay.
We'll have to wait, right? Those things can always get disrupted by ingenious fans, right?
Well,
they may want the Laker fans to sit somewhere.
Yeah.
But maybe they won't, Right?
Well, I mean, but again, the app, like this is what's kind of dangerous, man. If they have access to your stuff.
That's the thing. Like you're being surveilled the entire game. They know what you're doing, what you're buying, where you're walking, if you're sitting, if you're not sitting.
Yeah.
If you're cheering, if you're not cheering.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, because that's the kind of stuff, like you talk about a Steinbrenner move. This guy might be crazy enough where it's like, hey, someone in Section 302 is absolutely destroying you.
Right.
Steve Ballmer to his friend.
Right.
Talking. We can hear him, though. And he's saying Steve Ballmer's an idiot, buffoon. Security shows up. Like, that's.
You're right. Well, James Dolan's done it with facial recognition at Madison Square Garden.
That guy right there was yelling at me, kick him out.
James Dolan, that famous, the facial recognition where if you're a lawyer that's on a lawsuit, if your name is on a lawsuit suing the New York Knicks, he figures out a way to ban you from Madison Square Garden. Yeah. This has happened. He's banned Charles Oakley.
Yeah, Charles Oakley.
Our good pal Oak.
And Oak was justified in making sure that he knew what was going on there.
Oh, that was disgraceful.
That was ridiculous and so stupid to do. Like, Knick fans love Charles Oakley.
I know. So
like
do Raptor fans. I mean,
course.
What a player.
Bulls fans, everyone loves Oak.
What a man. He's
absolutely
old school. You don't make him like that anymore. As my old pal Frank Isola called it in his book about Charles, the last enforcer. Right?
Yeah. Oh,
NBA ain't like that anymore.
That was it, right?
Yeah.
Go ask Vince about that.
Like people were watching FIBA and how physical it was, and they were like, wow, I wish the NBA was like that. And I heard people saying that, and I was like, the NBA was like that.
Yeah.
It used to be physical.
It was way more physical than that.
A generation ago, they were killing Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
The Pistons were dropping Michael Jordan to the deck every time he came into the lane.
Yep.
Do that now, good luck.
Well, that's how and a lot of it is hyperbole, but that's why you hear the former players saying Mike would average like 50 a night.
Right, because nobody can touch him.
No one could touch him.
Right. It's not like he wasn't a great three-point shooter.
That's the thing.
I think he would have become one.
He was so good that he would have figured that out.
He probably would.
Because he established the fadeaway later in his career. Remember, the second half of his career, that was his move. He'd get into the paint and fade away.
Yeah, when he got tired of getting hammered.
Yeah, exactly.
Drilled every time he dunked on somebody. So, yeah, it's funny how it goes. But, yeah, the Intuit Dome, I think that's you talk about bucket list destination trips. You were talking about Wrigley.
Yeah.
Jays are in Wrigley today. But those new stadiums.
They look amazing.
Like if you could do the SoFi Intuit Dome.
Yeah, both in LA.
Sphere, you'd be all out in that West Coast area.
LA, Vegas, back and forth.
Like the 3 state-of-the-art, the most recent state-of-the-art innovations in entertainment viewing, right?
What are you hearing on what Scotiabank's planning on doing? Is I would assume they want the same technology. Like they're probably going to go to some app at some point too.
I don't know about that. I haven't heard that. They're spending $300+ million.
Yeah, and they're upgrading it so that buying stuff is kind of like you just walk through and click.
That's
what I mean?
That's pretty common. I've been to a lot of stadiums where that's common.
Big in the States.
Yeah.
I know when I was at Ford Field last year, that was the case. There's no one working in there. There's security or something.
Yeah.
But it's like you got to pay for it, you grab it, and you leave.
You talk to the arena workers, they're like, yeah, they don't want us working here anymore.
That's basically what it is. It's like cashless, and you don't need people to work. Humanless. Basically what it is.
But I don't know how much they're going to do that at Scotiabank. I haven't seen the plan for that particular aspect of it. I think it's mostly just doing what everybody has to do.
Just upgrading where you have to upgrade.
Yeah, if you want rich people to pay exorbitant prices, it's got to be a certain level.
Yeah,
and this is a 25-year-old arena, and it's been updated a few times since it opened, but it was due. That's what's coming. All right, Dave Naylor will join us. Bob Weeks still to come later this afternoon as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Melanin Fridays brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP serving fish bowls and ice-cold pints on the patio all summer long. So grab your sunscreen and let's have ourselves a weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling. Absolutely. All right. Jay's losing this afternoon in extras at Wrigley. But a little extra baseball at Wrigley, nothing wrong with that on a Friday afternoon. Looked like a packed house, a lot of Blue Jay fans down there like you would expect. Right. But, Vladdy went 0 for 5 today. So, no more $300 million contract. That's right. That's it. One bad game at Wrigley, you're out. Trade him. Anyway, that took place today. We've got the FedEx Cup continuing. We're tracking that. A bunch of Canadians in the tournament. I wouldn't say necessarily in the hunt, but Nick Taylor's somewhat in the hunt this weekend. And Bob Weeks will join us in about an hour. But here's our TSN football insider, Dave Naylor, joining us here on a beautiful Friday here in Toronto. How you doing, Dave? Very well. Just got back from Chicago myself. Is that right?
Yeah, down at Bears practice yesterday. They were doing a joint practice with the Cincinnati Bengals in the rain, I might add. It was,
Okay.
it was funny. We were debating whether or not they were going to move it indoors. But, of course, when you've got two teams, each bringing 90 players, that's 180 players that have to be in one of those indoor barns. So they left it out. And the Bengals had two players carted off during that practice. Yeah, so, it's always the risk of doing that.
That is a huge risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you buying the Bears hype? Because, like, a lot of people want to apply what happened to Houston last year and just simply say that's going to be the Bears. Like, the Bears will be the Houston Texans of the NFC. Are you buying that?
Well, it's hard not to buy it. I watched Caleb Williams yesterday, and you look at those receivers that he lines up with. I mean, David Sanchez and I standing in the corner of the end zone when he tossed a laser beam to the back, and Keenan Allen went up and did a remarkable contortion of his body to come down with the ball, get his feet down. You just kind of look at it and think, man, he's got some weapons on this team. And Roman Dunze, of course, DJ Moore. It's hard to think of a rookie quarterback who's ever walked into a situation like this. And the Bears, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Jets when I was there, because the Jets are, of course, a team that's multiple years of missing the playoffs, and yet there's these huge expectations around them. And it's kind of like that with the Bears, multiple years of missing the playoffs, and yet there are these huge expectations around them. There's kind of a culture thing with the Bears, of course, as well, that, the one position they have always lacked is an elite quarterback. I mean, their record book for passing is owned mostly by a guy named Sid Luckman, who played in, the 40s. Something like, I mean, it's the dead ball era, essentially. The game was completely different. And Caleb Williams has a chance to kind of be not just the greatest quarterback of the Bears of this era, but all time, because the bar is incredibly low. So quite a lot of excitement. Yeah, I got to say, I am buying the Bears hype.
Okay. So you talked about the Jets. I gotta ask the obvious follow up there. Now, Caleb Williams, 22 years old, a spry young man with all kinds of potential. Not so much for Aaron Rodgers, Naylor. Like, what is your prognosis for the immediate future for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets at age 40?
I think if Aaron Rodgers had to be the Aaron Rodgers 5 years ago, that would be an unrealistic expectation. It's such a short list of guys that have played the sport at age 40 at all, never mind played it well. And then, of course, you have the year off for Rodgers. Then you have the year before, statistically, was a down year for him. So, you'd have to reverse a lot of trends, both sort of recent Aaron Rodgers trends and historical NFL trends, in order to expect him to be, the MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers. But I'm not sure he has to be on that team. I mean, I think they've invested in this team because they got to win now. I mean, it's such a weird thing that they have the longest playoff drought in the NFL, and yet it's like it's Super Bowl or bust, right? And I think when you look at Breece Hall, when you look at Garrett Wilson, when you look at Mike Williams, and the defense, that's the other thing. They shouldn't have to win these games, 43-37 or anything. So I think when you combine the style of play that they're going to play, the type of games they're going to get in, because they're going to be low-scoring games, I think the last several years have told you that with the Jets. Those are the type of games they tend to get in. And you look at the talent that's around them, I think the Jets can be formidable.
With Dave Naylor at TSN Football Insider, looking to the CFL, still no news yet on Chad Kelly. He met with Randy Ambrosie, the commissioner, this morning. Should we read anything into that? Like, what do you make of the fact that nothing has been revealed in terms of how that meeting went and whether or not he's fully reinstated yet?
Well, I'll go with some fresh information here, because I'm just working on this as we speak, guys. The meeting between Chad Kelly and the commissioner did in fact happen today, and the league, what I believe the league has tried to impose some further conditions on Chad Kelly, so that, you could be reinstated, but these are the conditions under which you're going to be reinstated. And I don't know that the Argos or Chad Kelly's representative are on board with that. Specifically, one that is known as a last chance agreement, which I believe is sort of a condition that would say, if we've decided you do anything that runs afoul of our expectations of you, we get rid of you. in the league. Now that and the pushback is coming saying, well, that's not the way player discipline works under the collective agreement. That would not be that would basically taking away Chad Kelly's rights as a CFL player under the union if you forced him to accept a last chance agreement. I think there's some back and forth going on this. I think this is going to continue perhaps into the next few hours and days. I think the Argos are scheduled to practice on Sunday. There's some loggerheads on this one. I think there was, my expectation was that there was going to be a path for Chad Kelly to be able to return to the Argonauts in timing off their bye. But I think it was always understood there might be some conditions placed on him. And his question is whether those conditions were going to be palatable to Kelly and the Argos. And it appears at least one of them is not at this time.
Ooh. Yeah, I find the Argos' position in this very interesting because he's their guy. They've paid him, a lot of money. He's the MOP last year. They're committed to him. He's a box office guy. Yet, the league generally comes first, right, Dave? Like at some point, Chad Kelly will leave, and the Argos will continue to do work with the commissioner's office. So how do they balance that? Like it's one thing for the head coach or the GM to say, okay, let me talk to Chad, or let me try to figure out how this is in our best interest and work on behalf of the quarterback. It's another thing when Randy Ambrosi calls Keith Pelly up and goes, we're partners before you're partners with the quarterback. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, how do they juggle the two?
And I think you hit right on the dynamic that is the most kind of difficult to figure out in this,
right,
shall we say. And here's my kind of take on it. And I'm going to kind of go big picture here. I think when it came to the 9-game suspension and the conditions that were placed on Chad Kelly with that suspension, which, by the way, Chad Kelly was not, accepting of out of the gate back in May, I think the Argos were all on board with the league. I think they were all on board of trying to get Chad Kelly to do the right thing. I think they were all on board with not having him practice and deferring on the league to on that matter, which, by the way, they don't have to. It's not, when a player's under suspension, you can have him practice. And the Argos, essentially said, we're not going to do that because we know the league doesn't want him out there practicing, and we're going to return him to practice in lockstep with the league. I think the Argos were 100% behind the league on the 9-game suspension. However, beyond the 9-game suspension, I'm not sure the Argos are on board with what the league wants to further impose. I think the Argos' take is that he served his 9 games. He's satisfied the conditions. He's done his evaluations. Punishment served. Time to move on. I think that is more where the Argos are right now. So that's why this is such a pressure point. I think that this right now, not only with regard to the commissioner's relationship with Chad Kelly, but perhaps the Argos as well.
Well, do you get a sense, Dave, or have you gotten a sense over the course of this long suspension of what the league's concerns are going forward? Like why they may feel that 9 games isn't quite enough? There needs to be more?
I think so much of it, Dave, has to do with Chad Kelly's history. I think if this was Chad Smith, who was a free agent from, Southern Miss or something and had no track record, I think it would be different. The problem and the challenge with Chad Kelly, should we say, is that, going back to high school, in college, in the NFL, there have been numerous occasions where he has exercised poor decision-making and, had to deal with some significant fallout from his decisions and been given other chances. And then, back we go. That's his history. And I think what the league is trying to do is not be part of that cycle. So, you can, look, I think it was a very, very strong punishment. Without trying to diminish what Chad Kelly, did or has admitted he did or the report says he did, I think by any standard, half a season is a lot. But I think Chad Kelly didn't help himself last February and March, when his future and the discipline was kind of pending with some of his activities on social media, some cryptic stuff. There's at least one video of himself that was posted where I described it as him showing a complete lack of self-awareness. And that might be putting it gently. Those are the things I think that the league sees all kinds of red flags on. And that's why if they're going to have Chad Kelly back, they want to be able to have some measure of control, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting scenario on the East Coast. Then on the West Coast, you consider it's just euphoria with Nathan Rourke's return. And right, it coincides with Vernon Adams being injured anyway. So there's no carousel week one of Rourke's return because Adams isn't going to play. So Rourke's going to step in and play. How has the league responded to this? We've spoken to people in Vancouver. We had the GM of the Lions on. We had Farhan on recently. Like everyone out in BC and in Vancouver, they're loving life, and the coverage has been immense, and the ticket sales, and they're hosting the Grey Cup this year. In terms of the league office, like how big of a get is this to have Nathan Rourke return and step right in and start playing?
I think they're euphoric at having him. Mm-hmm. And look, you got to think of it from the league's perspective here, Brian, is that forever, I think the Canadian Football League has wanted to have, a legit Canadian star quarterback. That's been sort of the dream. And, people talk about Russ Jackson, but I mean, Russ Jackson is like more than 50 years ago, right. that he was slinging it around the CFL. And it's been something that has been long sought after. And I don't mean just a guy who can come in and play. I mean a guy who legit is excitement. If you go back to that 2022 season, I mean, I was on a lot of panel games that year, and when the Rourke games came along, it was different. I mean, just the excitement in the studio, on the panel, with the energy, the anticipation, and then what he went out and did. I think that's why there's so much excitement. The Canadian thing is nice, and it sort of takes it to another level. But Nathan Rourke was a superstar in this league, and he was a guy who just again threw the ball all over the field for a high completion percentage, won a bunch of games, and just made you want to watch. And the anticipation about Sunday night, I mean, the last time he played a meaningful game was November of 2022. I mean, he played in 2 preseason games, might have been 3, but certainly 2 last summer, and that's it. So, the expectations may be a bit out of whack given how much football he's played and how it may take him a while to kind of get up to speed, but I think there's a tremendous amount of excitement about this. And look, I think, Nathan Rourke wants to be in the National Football League, no question. But when it came to the CFL, his first and foremost and maybe only destination that he ever considered was getting back to BC, just because his relationship with the coach and GM there, his family roots there, he bought a home there, just everything about it he loved. And I think for a guy who hasn't been treated like he's very special for a while, hasn't been given a lot of attention south of the border or opportunity, I think he's just probably, of all the people in this story, the one who's happiest about Sunday night is going to be Nathan Rourke. Absolutely. Must-see TV. Cannot wait for it. All right, Dave. Great stuff, pal. Appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me on. You got it. Dave Naylor, a TSN Football Insider. That's interesting reporting on Chad Kelly, man. Like, this sounds like it could drag out.
This is not good.
Yeah.
Not good for the Argos.
Like, the idea of a last chance clause, it's kind of like the 3 strikes in, like, California, and, like, other states.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're telling me this guy, like, what is the significance of the infraction? Because every league ostensibly has a last chance clause. You do something that's crazy, they can be like, you're just out.
Yeah, they can do that.
To anybody without a track record. You could have a clean slate. You do something that's crazy, you're out, you're gone.
Right.
But what constitutes that infraction?
The last chance.
Yeah, what is, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he has a weird interaction with a fan, you're gone?
That's the scary thing. And if you're representing Chad Kelly, you're like, as Dave Naylor just said, there are moments where he seems to lack some self-awareness that can get him in trouble. And you worry about what that last chance could be.
Yikes. All right, Bob Weeks coming up in about 45 minutes. The Jays are losing this afternoon at Wrigley. Vladdy going 0 for 5. We'll recap that game as well. Dave Feschuk in here, the Toronto Star. I'm Bryan Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Don Waddell will join us, the new GM down in Columbus. Some news on Patrick Laine, like allowing Laine and his reps to call around and try to find a deal.
Yeah.
Right, because Laine evidently doesn't want to stay there. I'm not sure Columbus wants to keep him. And he's had a lot going on in his life, a lot going on off the ice. But in terms of, on-ice production, it is what it is. Still gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Got so much talent. And Columbus is in a weird position now because they've brought in Don Waddell. They have a new coach. You signed Sean Monahan, give him a fair amount of money and a fair amount of term. Johnny Gaudreau's making a good buck. They're trying to figure it out there. And we'll catch up with Don, get his take on a number of things. That's in the next hour. Bob Weeks coming up. I saw Jaime Diaz of the Golf Channel reporting that he's fairly convinced John Rahm is miserable on LIV. And he'd love to give the money back and return to the PGA Tour.
He looks it, right? Like he's looking
He
miserable.
always looks miserable.
Well,
he looks particularly miserable on LIV.
way more than I ever saw. Like he was a hothead before he went to LIV. But you watch him, when you watched him kind of come to the majors this year, he just didn't look like himself. He didn't have the
He's
fire.
lost it, man. He's lost the fire.
Yeah.
And that's too bad because he was a great personality. He was a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
Very engaging.
Oh.
Like great speaker. Like
got
great
it,
interview.
man. Incredible.
Got it. And yet it looked as if he just felt like everyone was staring at him.
Well, as somebody said to me, that's the look of a man who sold his soul.
Yeah, that's what it looked like, man. And he played like it, too.
Yeah.
He's played like it. All right, final hour coming up. Bob Weeks will join us. Don Waddell, we're tracking. Again, the Jays losing at Wrigley today as they continue that series down in Chicago. So we'll look ahead to the weekend games as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.